Welcome back to A History Burst, continuing the story of the Mormons. Previous burst has covered their origins and looking at in some detail the two leaders, Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, and how they led either successfully or unsuccessfully the Mormons of their journey west from New York in the early 1830s into the 1840s on their way to settling under the leadership of Brigham Young at Salt Lake Valley in what is now modern-day Utah. The Mormons, as we know, they are a contentious group. I've likened them previously to Marmite. You either love them or hate them, and at the time this was certainly true. So by the time the 1850s have rolled around, Brigham Young is well established as the leader of the Mormons. And he wants to create an independent Mormon state. However, the US government disapproved of the Mormon practice of polygamy, having many wives at the same time, and a conflict begun. So despite the successes at Salt Lake, establishing a productive and ever-growing community, they come into dispute with the federal American government. And as you can see from the diagram in front of you, it just kind of reminds you some of the core basics that Joseph Smith founded the religion, considered to be a prophet from God. It's a branch of Christianity that believes in the crucifixion, resurrection, and divinity of Jesus Christ. Their Bible is called the Book of Mormon, which was written in 1830, and they believe that the Garden of Eden is in Jackson County, Missouri. Their main values include family life, good deeds, and respect for authority, and missionary work, which is converting non-Mormons, Gentiles, to become Mormons. And they follow strict lifestyle, banning alcohol, tobacco, coffee, tea, etc., which again means that they rub up against, metaphorically, traditional American white values. So what you see in front of you is an outline of what becomes known as the Utah War, or the Mountain Meadows Massacre of 1857, which is this direct headbutting, so to speak, between the Mormons and the federal American government. As ever, you can pause the video and spend some time looking at the story, but you have illustrated there that it's the US versus Utah, which is not part of the Union, and we have the background that it stems from, that Brigham Young had been leader of the Mormons but wants to create this independent Mormon state. However, the US government disapprove of this polygamy, which has been accepted long established by the Mormons, and in 1856 the Republican Party formally stated their opposition from a political point of view of polygamy. And so what you have is that the president, 1857, President James Buchanan, declares war against the Mormons, who refuse to submit to US control. In May of the same year, Buchanan appoints a new governor to Utah, replacing, if you will, Brigham Young, and he puts a non-Mormon in place to run Utah, and sends the army to accompany the new governor to enforce the Mormons' acceptance of this dictate. By the autumn of 1857, more than 140 non-Mormon migrants were killed in the Mountain Meadows Massacre by a Mormon militia, with their own army. In 1858, Congress, so that's that federal government, forces Buchanan to make peace and agreed to pardon the Mormons as long as they submitted to government control. One of the weaknesses of the American side was that the troops were dispatched late in the season and failed to receive adequate supplies in winter. And on the plus side for the Mormons, they were, kind of almost like David and Goliath, that they were heroic in the face of a formidable military threat. The importance of this, significance of this event is quite clearly stated there, that tensions escalate between the Mormons and the Native Americans, who had to compete for resources, which, originally in their history, the Mormons and the Natives got along quite well. They shared that common practice of polygamy, and they get along quite well. That's certainly better than previous migrant groups who headed west that did not get along with either the Mormons or the Native Americans. The settlers' livelihoods and economic well-being were seriously impacted in the short term and signals a slow decline of Mormon power in Utah. And over time, you see more and more non-Mormons, Gentiles, settling in Utah, in essence, kind of diluting within, quote marks, the strength of the Mormon presence in Utah itself. So following the 1857-1858 dispute over who and which type of governor should run Utah, you see here a little bit of a chronology of some of the things that pinch and push back on the Mormons from the federal perspective of the American government. So we have the 1862 Act, bigamy, which is marrying somebody when you're already married to somebody else, so polygamy. Attempts to outlaw polygamy, not enforced, as Lincoln doesn't want the Mormons to get involved in the Civil War, hence the date 62. The war had been going for a year, the Civil War, and Lincoln would have wanted as many soldiers on side to support, and he doesn't want to alienate the Mormons to maybe fight on the side of the South. So it's kind of a weak law. 1882, so a bit of a jump. The Edmunds Act, tougher measures are introduced again from the federal government to state that polygamists are banned. They're not allowed to. So if you are a polygamist, you are not allowed to vote anymore. You cannot be elected into power. So you cannot have a political position. You can't sit on juries and be part of the judicial system. And in 1887, the Edmunds-Tucker Act puts an end to polygamy once and for all. It's punishable fines. You go to jail for 5 years, and dissolves the Mormon Church seizing over $50,000. So impacts of these laws: ultimate Utah was not allowed to become a state until polygamy is gone. So in 1890 is when the Mormon Church finally abolished polygamy, after the Supreme Court threatens to confiscate their land. So it's just this small piece of a burst is to kind of revisit where we left the Mormons in the 1840s and early 1850s, growing their settlement in Salt Lake, and see, well, what happens next. It's a bit like that. Well, they don't live happily ever after in that sense. There is this particular Mountain Meadow massacre that spurs on the continuing legislative powers of the federal government against the Mormon Church.